Assalamu alaikum. Nice to be with you again and to contribute to this conference. So, as you can see, the title of my presentation is How to Create Resource Centers and Actively Use Them. I managed to go through the internet in order to find some material on this, and I found one that is not really related to education, but it's related to health. And they were talking about how to create resource centers for health and so on. And I managed to pick up some of the tips, and which I think they are also applicable for resource centers anywhere, and included education. Okay. So, Bismillah. The outline of this presentation. So first, I'm going to talk about, some of the things we can do with resource centers. Next point is going to be the first part of the creation and management of resource center, planning a resource center. Section 2, management and finance. Section 3, location, size, and structure. Section 4, developing the collection. It normally should be a quite long presentation, but I tried to really, get things so squeezed in order to come up with some tips that I hope I can do and present within the 25 minutes allotted to presentation. So the first, what a resource center can do. The first thing is that we have make information accessible. And here there are a number of things that you can do in order to make information accessible. Collect and organize materials. Provide access to materials that are up to date and relevant to students, teachers, parents, and administration. Provide a pleasant environment for learning and training. Then next act is encourage the use of information. And here as well we have a number of things we can do. I hope it's visible. Assist users to find relevant information and suggest how they can use it in their work. Provide materials to support teaching and the promotion of learning. Provide information to those responsible for planning, managing, and implementing education programs, including community groups, ELT supervisors, delegations, academy, and ministry. So you can see that the resource centers really can go high into their objectives. Apart from just the resource center activities and so on, you can come up with a number of, it's a kind of raw material there. You have a lot of data on the students, on the teachers, parents, administration that you can use in order to build, policies and education programs, etc. Produce information packs and resources or resource lists. Organize participatory workshops that use materials as tools for problem solving, consolidation, and promoting learning. And this is something you can, and this is usually done via activities workshops. Work with teachers, trainers, and students to identify resource materials for training activities. Offer information and inquiry services for students, parents, administration, whoever. Develop ways to reach potential contributors to the promotion of teaching and learning. Next component is produce materials. What we can do here is that teachers, students, administration, parents, and other contributors work together to document their experience. And you can see here documentation going on. Pictures, banners, etc. And you can go further than this. Adapt, translate, and produce teaching and learning materials. Next component, strengthen links with other community groups and organizations. List local, regional, national, international organizations working in education and related fields. Develop contacts between organizations working in similar fields such as the Ministry of Education, non-governmental organizations, community organizations, and universities. Identify other sources of information. So of course, this is not the limit. This is not the end of it. There are a number of things you can come up with by yourselves, okay, depending on your experience and how you go on into the work inside the resource centers. Now I move on to the next point, which is section 1, planning a resource center. And here we have a number of things that we can do. It's a very long, really long things I have been going through, but I managed to just to talk about a few of them. So so here you can see that there are many. There is assessing information needs. This is before going into the resource center. Planning, developing an action plan, interviewing strategies, tips, and sample questionnaires, advisory committees, networks and networking, monitoring and evaluation. Let us go into the first one, assessing needs or information needs. So before you go into your resource center, it is recommended that teachers do some kind of needs analysis before doing anything, okay? And how can you do that? So you have to find information about who the users will be, the age, the sex, educational level. Find information what their information needs are. Subjects, goals in order of priority, activities, formats of materials like articles, books, personal advice, training manuals, videos, newsletters. What materials are available and needed and how much they cost. How information can be disseminated, resource lists, bulletins, or document supply services. So this is for the first thing. Planning. So, clear purpose and overall plan of activities for the short and long terms. So you have to establish a vision, mission, aim, objectives, action plan, which we'll talk about later, communication, contingencies, what if situations, policies and procedures, resources, external environment, and then monitoring and evaluation. So for all this, you have to deal with them in your strategic plan. Next point is developing an action plan. How are you going to develop this action plan in order to talk about all the things in the previous slide? It is useful to have action plans for each area of the resource center's work. Maybe you're going to notice that I'm going to really high into the level of a resource center, okay? And I'm going to talk about this issue at the end of my presentation. So an action plan, you can do an action plan for fundraising, for selecting and ordering materials, for organizing materials, computerization, providing information services, promoting the resource center, networking, and cooperation. Set objectives. Assess the objectives. Identify action required to achieve the objective. Work out how to evaluate the activity. Agree a time frame. Assess the action plan. Finalize the action plan. So all these, you have to deal with them and find out ways how you can do these things in order to establish an action plan. So, next point is when you are going to do your needs analysis in order to find out what is really needed, what the students really need and want. So you need to do some interviews, okay, or questionnaires. You can do interviews and questionnaires not only with the students, you do that with the teachers, with the colleagues, with the parents, with the administration, and with other people who already have an experience of a resource center. So you do interviews and questionnaires. So I'm not going to do details of interviews, okay, because of time constraint. Let me go. So there are some, and I think most of you know how to do this because there is literature about exactly how to do this, exactly how to do or manage interviews, and also to do questionnaires. Okay, I'm not going to go into these. And concerning the other elements here, advisory committees, networks, and I'm going to go to them in a few minutes. Next section is management and finance, and here we have the following: staffing and the responsibilities of the staff, advisory committees, financial planning, fundraising, and income generation. So let's talk about the first one. Briefly, okay? Let's go quickly. For the resource center, you can have two permanent, this is an estimation. It depends on the experience of each resource center. But for an average resource center or usual kind of resource center, we can have two permanent people, like we could call resource center officer and a resource center assistant. Okay? So these are the two. And then, in addition to these two, we can establish an advisory committee, to which we will come later on. So let's go directly to the responsibilities of these two people. Okay, of the resource center officer and his or her assistant. Now, develop a collection and management policy in consultation with the teachers, students, parents, administration, and the resource center advisory committee. There should be a policy, okay, that you have to establish with all these people. Gather information and materials to meet the needs of resource center users in consultation with the teachers, students, parents, administration, and the resource center advisory committee. Develop and maintain an effective ordering system for new materials, because one of the main tasks of a resource center is to collect books, materials, whatever types of materials. Okay, books, videos, whatever. So for this, you have to develop and maintain an effective ordering system, okay? Process materials, including entering new materials into the accession register and classifying and cataloging materials. Hopefully, the resource center gets materials. So in order to organize things, they have to be classified, organized. Okay, and I'm going to come up to this later on when I talk about entering the materials and how the tips for doing that. Ensure that the resource center is user-friendly and accessible, including assisting users to identify materials. Very useful, very important, in order to promote the resource center. In order to promote the resource center. So you have to provide a user-friendly environment. And also be available for assisting, giving information, advice, and so on. Develop activities in which users can share ideas and concerns on the role of the resource center. Work with users to identify activities that information could support and provide materials for those activities. There are other points I will skip, but you will have the presentation later on. Next point is the advisory committee. It is advisable to establish a committee with about 5 or more, depending on the experience of the resource center. Very important. Advise resource center staff how to implement the resource center's aims and objectives. These people will be given advice. Ensure that the needs of the resource center and its intended users are being met. You achieve your target. Advise and participate in planning activities. Assist with the selection of staff in case, because A resource center is not an easy task. Not everybody can do a resource center, okay? You know the situation, okay? And therefore, in order to guarantee some success for your resource center, you need to really look for people who are maybe ready for sacrifice, a little bit, to sacrifice their time, their stay with family, and so on, in order to be with the students. Because the work we do normally in resource centers, we do it outside of our workload normally, okay? So you have to be careful about this, not anyone. And also, try to select the people who are competent for doing the work, okay? Participate in developing a management policy and selecting new materials. Decide the opening hours and times of the activities. Advise whether to lend materials and which ones. Participate in setting budgets. Encourage the use of the resource center. Ensure that the mechanisms are in place for monitoring and evaluating the resource center. The financial planning, very important. How to establish financial needs. So you need to establish again your needs for the resource center before you go into looking into the financial situation and whatever financial means you need. So the things you have to look at for this are the furniture, computer equipment, photocopier, data show, air conditioner, okay, bookshelves, special project costs like workshops, publications, whatever kind of activities you do, you need some cost for that, okay? So let me go back now to how, okay, the next point, fundraising and income generation. Now, possibilities for fund or income, sources of income, could be the school itself, academy, ministry, local government or non-government organizations, companies, professional associations, international organizations. Let me be realistic here. It's not an easy task to do when you are looking for sponsoring. And that's why when I was talking about the level I was targeting in my presentation for a resource center is really a high one, okay? Going beyond what we normally do. And here is an example of what I'm saying. So, it might be, that's why also I was talking about the people who are going to participate in the resource. They need to be really competent people in terms of communication, in terms of openness, in terms of flexibility, in terms of adaptability, and so on. And also they need to be ready for some self-sacrifice. So in order to do these things, you have to have these qualifications, okay? And maybe, usually it won't work, from experience. But when it works, believe me, you will be doing that maybe all your life afterwards. You will notice that it is rewardable. Then, membership fees or fees for using the resource center. This is something you are used to in MATE and now in MorceNet association. Payment for services provided such as printing. You can look into this. You do printing and then you can ask maybe, I don't know about legal issues in this, but this is what I can suggest. We discuss this illegally later on. Photocopying, searches, sales of information packs or publications providing consultancy. How much you can do these things in school. Applying for national and international grants. And there are grants. We just need to look for these grants. On the net, you have plenty of them. Okay. Now, this section is quite small. I'm not going to go in details as well. So, location, size, and structure, space. When you want to find a place for your resource center, you have to think about the following: space for materials to be shelved. You have to provide a place for that. Workspaces for users. desks, tables, chairs. Display area, space for photocopier, printer, computer desk, space for meetings and training activities, and storage space for materials waiting to be processed. So you have to think about all this and find, and usually our classrooms we have in schools, they can fit for these necessities for our resource center. An example of a possible layout of medium-sized resource center could be something like this. This could be an example of a layout for a resource center. You can get rid of those 2 rooms there and make it 1 room. And this is the usual tendency we have in resource centers. 1 room, but you have to put space for meetings, space for activities, space for displaying, like what we have. This is a good example of what I'm talking about in here. Displaying it, etc. Next point, and the last one, is developing the collection policy. So, developing a collection policy, you have to establish this on the basis of aims, needs, and users of the resource center, subject areas, format of materials, sources of materials. You have to look at producers and distributors, bibliographic sources, local information sources, internet, selecting materials. Then the next step I want to talk about before finishing is when you receive the materials. The accessions register can tell what you can do for collecting and organizing your materials, the date each material has been added, classification number. This is usually the type of work that is done normally in libraries, but you can do it for organization purposes into your resource center. The resource center needs to be a good reflection of the teacher you want to be, the type of work you want to do in the resource center. So you have to, it's a reflection. So you have to be organized in order to promote the resource center and have better things in the future. A brief description of the materials, title, author, publication, the number of materials added or removed, the subject areas to which materials have been added, the source, the publisher, distributor of materials, the cost of materials, and publishers or distributors that regularly provide materials for free. And then there is the updating of the collection. I skipped going into the tips for selecting materials, obtaining producers, and so on, but you will find this later on in a video. And this is the main reference. I'm going to provide it to the organizing committee. It's the Resource Center Manual, How to Set Up and Manage a Resource Center by HealthLink Worldwide 2003. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kim, for your fruitful presentation.